अभी अभी हाल ही में यहाँ पर धमाका हुआ है। कुछ लोगों को यहाँ पर बचाया भी गया है। लोगों को आगे भी लेकर पहुँचे हैं। एम्बुलेंस में है ले जाया जा रहा है। हमने आपको दिखाई, लेकिन ये तस्वीर बताने के लिए काफी है। हो सकता है
Alright, so we're trying to get Shravan live from the Malyn bombing site. These are visuals coming in, streaming at this time. As you see them on your screens, we'll probably be able to hear Shravan in just a short while from now. He'll be able to give us a sense of when the bombing occurred and what the situation is like. But pretty much the pictures speaking for themselves, as you see that the rescue team is now trying to douse off that fire. And it looks like a residential area that's been completely charred due to the shelling. I can see Shravan, and Shravan, if you can hear me, please talk to us. You're at Malyn. The rescue operations are being conducted. Shravan, talk to us.
City. Suesha, if you can hear me, this is the 17th city that Republic Media Network has now reached. This is a place called Malyn, where the bombing took place less than 12 hours ago. This is in the northern Ukrainian area where the aerial bombardment took place roughly around between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock is what we are being told. Let me just switch over the camera and show you what's really happening, because right now, as smoke still billowing out, and the firefighters who are basically trying to douse the fire. What you see right now is the damage that has been caused because of the aerial bombardment that took place. Now, just to explain where this place is and what's the current situation, Malyn is right up in the northern Ukrainian side, which is not very far from two other places that we have covered in the last 24 to 48 hours. Overwatch being one of them, and the other is in Zotomir, where we have been told that there's been constant aerial bombardment that's taking place. The reason being why these areas are being constantly targeted is, remember, these areas are not very far from where the Russians are carrying out their offensives in terms of the aerial bombardment. And the fact of the matter is that you are looking at an area not very close from Belarus, from where some of the operations are being carried out. And this is on its way. This route is basically on its way to Kiev. And the fact of the matter is that on the ground, what we are witnessing is this constant damage. Let me try and go across to a little far away to show you the extent of the damage. This is rather the epicenter of the bombing that took place, and that's the reason why this house has been completely down to rubble right now. What you see right now here, and even till now, which is a little almost about 10 hours from now, and still the firefighters are finding it very, very difficult to douse the fire. We have about 2 fire engines that we could spot while we were on our way to this very place, where you can see right now as I speak. They are trying to douse the fire. It's been difficult to contain the fire. This is also, once again, a civilian area where the bombing has actually taken place. As far as the casualties are concerned, we are told that about 5 people have been killed. This includes children who have died in the aerial bombardment. In total, if you look at three areas in and around where this bombing has actually taken place, one is Malyn, the other is Overwatch, and the third place is the very place from where we reported last afternoon. So these are the areas where the bombings have been taking place. In fact, when we were on our way to this very place, there was a checkpoint, the Ukrainian army checkpoint, where they are saying that they suspect that even today, later in the evening, we are given to understand they are expecting that there could be more bombing that could take place. So let me try and go a little down as I speak to you and get you the latest visuals. As you can see, the firefighters who are still here at the spot, they're trying to douse the fire. We tried speaking to one of the administrators here right now, just to give us an understanding how many bombs were actually dropped. In this area, about 3 bombs were dropped. Take a look at what's the situation right now. As I speak right now, billowing out in this area, which gives you a sense of what really happened. And in the last few days, as per the US intelligence reports, we are being told over 50 missile strikes have actually taken place. So you're not looking at not just missile strikes, but also aerial bombardment that has increased in these areas. So while the entire world's focus right now is in Kiev, but what's actually happening is that they're trying to contain the Ukraine army in and around Kiev, while these are the areas what you see just behind me, where the bombing is still taking place and the massive destruction that's actually taking place in these areas. So you get a sense of what's really happening on the ground. And the fact of the matter is that this is the 17th city that we have reached, and almost in all places there is one story that is basically emerging: how the civilian areas are being constantly targeted by the Russian troops. If you go by the casualty numbers, over 1,334 people have died since the war began 13 days ago, and the UN is basically suggesting that the number could actually go up. The number could be way more than what you are seeing. So while on the one hand, when the invasion actually began, the target was mostly the military bases, the government buildings. But now, apart from the military buildings and the government offices, you are also looking at some of the populous regions of Ukraine being targeted by the Russian troops. And we have been to almost all parts. We have been to the eastern part, where you see what is really happening right now in Kharkiv and Sumy. And right now what you're seeing is that even in the northern parts, which are areas which are closer to Belarus, we are seeing the kind of destruction. Let me once again switch and show you. This is what remains of a house in this area. As you see, this is the impact of the bombardment that has actually taken place. Take a look at this. Take a look at the crater that has been created because of the bombing. Well, this is just a small part of the crater that you could see. Once the debris is removed, one would actually get a real idea of the bombardment that has taken place. That's one more house that you see in front of me that has been damaged. Similarly, as far as my sight goes, I can see houses after houses that have been damaged. There is smoke all around me. Speak right now, as you see, the smoke still billowing out, making it very little difficult for us to also continue reporting from this area. In fact, I'm being told that this is going to take some time before they are in a position to try and douse the fire. It's going to be a little difficult for them to contain the fire. I think so. There is a crater that I spot here. So in total, as of now, there are about 3 such have been created. Take a look at this. Take a look at this crater that has been formed because of the bombing that's actually taken place. So similar sort of images that we have getting you from one place to the other. This is the crater that has been formed in the area, which shows where the bomb was actually dropped. And look at the size of it. You get a full sense of the massive bomb that was dropped. We do not know exactly the weight of the bomb that was dropped, but in some of the areas from where we've been reporting, in fact, in the place in Overwatch yesterday when we were reporting, we were told that there was a 500 kilogram of bomb that was dropped, and here we do not have a clear idea of it. Ukrainians, while they are certainly carrying out their offensive, take a look at this. This is what you see, the remains of a particular house. I'll try and just switch over again to show you. This is what it looks like right now inside a house in this particular area. And the same goes on the other side. If you see, there is another house there where you see the same kind of damage that has taken place. So each and every household in these areas have been completely damaged because of the bombing that has taken place. Remember, all of this in the backdrop of what we've been told is they're looking for some sort of a military aid because more and with every passing day, what's really happening is that the offensives are only increasing. And let me just tell you, in terms of the preparation that the Russians have done and what the agencies are suspecting. So in the next 3 to 4 days, one can certainly expect that the Russian troops are perhaps going to mobilize themselves once again. There are about 11 landing ships near the Black Sea. We do not know the number of Russian troops or the number of missiles that are there inside those landing ships. And once they come in, which is the direction that they would be taking. But that gives you an idea of how the Russians are still trying to mobilize themselves. And then if you take a look at some of the other areas where we are being told that the private armies have been brought in by Russia. So in the days to come, it's going to be far more intensive than what we are looking at. This is perhaps just the prelude of what we are seeing. Things are going to even worsen in the days to come is what we gather after speaking to some of the officials here and the Ukrainian army that has been constantly warning the people that they should be leaving the cities. In fact, in Kiev, where we are being told that the evacuation is still on. But this comes on a day when both sides have basically announced a ceasefire in some of the areas, but none of them have really honored that kind of agreement. And that is the reason why you're looking at, while people are being told that humanitarian corridors, etc., but this is exactly how things are in each of the places that we are visiting, one place to the other. And just to give you an idea, the length and breadth of Ukraine, and in fact why we are saying that it is important that we cover almost every city that has come under the Russian attack, multiple attacks that have taken place, simply because while the focus remains in Kiev, what the Russian army is also doing is keeping the Ukrainian army distracted so that they are in a position to go ahead with their offensive in Kiev. Now, that's the focus right now. While they haven't been really very successful as far as Kiev is concerned, because they have not been able to capture. We are looking at the 13th day and things remain pretty much the same as far as the battle just outside Kiev is concerned. It's in Irpin, where we have been told that there has been a massive gun battle between both sides. But however, the Ukrainians are trying their level best to ensure that they are not in a position to enter. And while all of this is actually happening, what we are looking at is clearly a situation where time and again, these civilian areas are being attacked. Let me try once again, Suresh, go to those areas where where you can see that the fire still hasn't been able to control. So I'm going to the other side just to give you a full idea of the damage, the extent of the damage in these areas. And this is very similar almost in all the places that we have gone to. But what is a little different is that right now, beyond the missile strikes that have actually taken place, we are also looking at staring at a situation where aerial bombardments are taking place in most of the areas. Now, interesting development that's also taken place is the fact that how Ukraine has now lashed out at some of the European nations. Look at what the foreign minister actually said just a short while back, saying that Germany hasn't done enough. This comes just days after Germany has essentially said that they are not going to be a part of the ban that has been called as far as the oil imports are concerned. So clearly, for the Ukrainians, on the 13th day, things are far different, far more challenging than what it was right in the beginning, when it did appear that all the European nations are rallying behind Ukraine. There would be more military aid that would come in. But in terms of the equipments, in terms of the weaponry that the Ukrainians have at this point in time, there are anti-tank launchers that have been provided by Germany. In fact, they're also expecting it from Netherlands. They're also expecting this from Italy also. A total of 1,400 anti-tank launchers are expected to come in. But as of now, we are only looking at not a substantial amount. Let's also talk about a little of the latest satellite imageries that have come in. Those satellite imageries indicate that there is once again the Russian troops are trying to mobilize themselves. Then you also have more aircrafts being brought in. Interestingly, AN-2 aircrafts. These are aircrafts, specialized aircrafts that have been parked near Seshna, which is about 160 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. So you're once again looking at a situation which was similar about a week ago when you had that 60-mile convoy of armored vehicles. Now you have again a situation where in some parts you're looking at more sort of mobilization that's taking place from the Ukrainian side. So clearly, with every passing day, we are looking at a situation of more and more sort of regrouping that's actually taking place. Whether at all they have lost steam, the Ukrainians would like everyone to believe that the Russians have lost steam. They've not been able to mobilize themselves, and they are facing major challenges in terms of the fact that they are looking at perhaps... let me just go a little away from here and still show you some of the damage that has been caused. So coming back to what I was trying to point out is that the Russians certainly have faced some major challenges. There is a logistical issue that they are facing in terms of movement of those tanks that have certainly slowed down, and they have not been able to enter Kiev. But almost all intelligence reports are now essentially suggesting that things are going to be a little different. In next 2 to 3 days, one would certainly expect the offensive from the Russian side to be amped up. That would be much more than what we have witnessed. So things are going to be very, very difficult. That is the reason why even the Indian government, the Ministry of External Affairs, have now issued a fresh advisory asking all Indians to make use of the humanitarian corridor that has been announced, because after this they are not expecting any sort of announcement as far as these corridors are concerned, which is going to make evacuation very, very difficult. But even as we speak, some of the areas, especially in Cherniv, an area which has now been occupied by the Russians, we are seeing shelling still continue. Sumy being the other place where the Russians have occupied. There too, there was last night there was a lot more shelling taking place. Kharkiv, undoubtedly the second largest city of Ukraine, that has been completely pounded by the shelling that's taking place. And in the area that we are standing, which is once again, as you see, the destruction that has already been caused, and this is just going to increase. If you go by what the Ukrainian army had to say to us when we were crossing over the checkpoint that we were at, they were saying that situation is going to even worsen even tonight. So they were telling us that we should finish our reporting as soon as possible so that we can leave. In fact, what I'll do is continue with my broadcast, take a look at some more images, and I'll also change over my camera so that I can actually show you a little bit more. If our producers are hearing me, if they can just tell me if I've switched off to another camera right now to give you a vantage, give you a full 360-degree view. If my producers, if they are hearing me, if they can just confirm that I'm changing my camera and they'll be able to get my feed while from the camera also. From the other camera, I'll be sending in more reports. Let me just ask colleague Mridul to come in and also give you another view of this. Back in Bombay, if anyone can hear me, please do let me know so that I can continue with my broadcast from another camera. So I'm just shifting to another camera to give you the latest feed, and I'll ask my colleague Mridul to give you more visuals. Let me just now come back to the very place, and for all the viewers who are tuning in, just to understand where we are, what are we really doing here. Now, in the last few days, we have covered almost 17 cities. Now, this is the 17th city that we have reached. This is a place called Malyn. Malyn is a place in northern Ukraine, and this is not very far from the Ukraine-Belarus border, where in the last 48 hours there have been intense aerial bombardment that's taking place, missile strikes that have taken place in these areas, leading to large-scale destruction, and not just that, also civilian deaths that have taken place. In the place that we are right now, you can see less than 12 hours ago when this bombing took place, and take a look at it. Even right now, the fire is raging. Smoke is still billowing out. Difficult for the firefighters to control the situation right now. What you see on your screens are those latest images from the place that has been completely pounded. You have had about three bombs that were dropped in this very area. Roughly, the rough estimate that we have right now is about 10 households that have been destroyed in this particular area. About 5 deaths that have taken place, which also includes children. And in this area itself, not very far away from where we were reporting yesterday, Overwatch being one of the places, and the other happens to be Korostin, Overwatch and Malyn. These are the 3 places where the bombings have taken place simultaneously. We are looking at bombs, almost 500 kilogram of bombs that were dropped in Overwatch. There were 3 big craters that we had witnessed. Here, what you see right now in front of my eyes, I can at least see most of these houses that have been damaged on the other side, if you can see, where people were still living. And this is exactly what I've been emphasizing through my reports, that no longer are we looking at just military bases or the government buildings that are being targeted by the Russians. Now you're looking at civilians who are being targeted. If you go by the numbers that have been put out by the United Nations, they are saying about 1,334 deaths that have taken place. Here you have one individual who's showing... This was your house?
Да. Це гараж, машина, хата. Там хазяїн в хаті лежить, а ми тут ремонт робимо. Помагаємо, як сказати.
So, the little that I can understand from the last few days that I've been here, just to try and understand their language also. Remember, what they're basically pointing out is about these households or people who were actually living here. Let me just try and go across. I'll ask Andre also to come in, and our producers could try and connect with Andre because he's also here at the spot. He's in a slightly different location. Let me just go with this. Andre, if you can hear me, just tell us what is it that you're picking up? Did you actually speak to some of the locals? What are they telling you?
Забор побило, хату. У хаті тут теж.
And they telling me that those terrible bombardments happened in the evening, and people was preparing for sleep when this thing happened. And as you can hear, those guy who talked to you, he told you that while the bombardment was in the house was sleeping the owner, and he was sleeping when this happened. Yeah. And a lot of people told me that about right down the street where the bombardment was the house where 3 children were killed by Russian bombs. Nobody survived.
Coming back to you, but I've actually entered one of the house here. The gentleman here, obviously heartbroken with the kind of damage that has taken place because of the bombing. But Andre, I'll request you to also come in to speak to this gentleman. But what I understand, he was saying that there were people who are still living here. In fact, there's one gentleman who's still here. But I would like my camera person not to focus there much.
The house right now, so that they can see.
Помагаю, тому що нема кому допомогти, і хату треба... Тому що нема кому допомогти, і хату треба накрити, щоб дощ не замочив. І уборку треба зробити. Ремонт треба, ремонт.
See, I'll not be able in here, he could perhaps translate it for us, but whatever little that I've understood from what he's telling us, from some of the words that I have learned in the last few days, is that these are places where people have been living. In fact, as you see, not that people had moved out of this place. You can see their shoes here. There is a cup here, water bottles lying here. A clear fact that people were actually living here when the bomb actually took off. So now exploded rather. And if many people are wondering why is
very vulnerable, or these are areas that could be attacked by the Russians? The answer is this, that not everyone is right now in a position to leave these places, go to safer areas. And it's been very, very difficult for a lot
areas, and it's been very, very difficult for a lot of Ukrainians who do not have that kind of resources, who do not have the wherewithal to perhaps move to safer areas. And look at people like that. A lot of these are farmers who are here, and they are perhaps in no position. They are certainly in no position to perhaps leave their places, go to safer areas. They're finding it even more difficult, and you'll have a lot more areas. So every time our camera, there is undoubtedly palpable anger against the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and as I understand, almost everyone that we have gone across to, they are saying that innocent people are being killed in this war, and Ukrainians have been pointing out one thing, that this is not a war that they have chosen, but they were dragged into it. And the reason why you would find a lot of people cursing Putin, in fact, people here in Ukraine, they've started abusing the Russian president on the expected lines. Having said that, remember, what is becoming right now an important thing to highlight, that the Russian army has essentially been fed with what the Ukrainians call a cultural nationalism. What they were talking about is Slavic nationalism. And the Russians were expecting when they enter Ukraine, it's going to be a little different, that they are going to be welcomed by the people of Ukraine. What they are witnessing is that there is a lot more anger on the ground. People are not willing to welcome any of the Russian troops. And that is the reason why some of the prisoners of war whose questioning has taken place, some of the videos that we've also received, in which you would see some of them actually telling. Now, of course, they are in custody, so not everything can be taken on face value. But if you just hear what they have to say, they would actually tell you, the Russian who are the prisoners of war, they would tell you that they were told that they would be welcomed by the people of Ukraine. But that's not the case. When they came here, they found that people were attacking the tanks. In fact, what is happening right now, when we were coming in also, you would find at the checkposts there are Molotov cocktails that have been kept at the checkpost itself, so that if there is any civilian, they could pick up those Molotov cocktails and then hit at the front of the tank where the air pressure is created, and you basically try and target the front of the tank so that the tanks actually are damaged. Now that's exactly what happens. I'll ask Andre who's on this. Andre, why don't you speak to him, get him on camera, ask him what has happened. You can switch on the camera, you speak to him, I'll ask, you take him. I'm going across to Andre. I'll ask the gentleman, because he has been wanting to speak to us. Andre, you can speak to him. Ask him what he's saying, because he wants to. What I understood, Andre, you can come on this camera itself. You can ask the gentleman to come. You can ask him. You can translate what they are saying, because they have been wanting to speak to us, and we want to be, at least we want to hear them out. What is it that they want to say?
Скажіть, будь ласка, хто ви, що ви тут робите, що тут сталося?
Це моя родина. Це мій як брат. Це брат, а це мій брат, це братова хата. О, жінка померла, він дітей нема, він сам остався. Ну, ми його як доглядачі за ним. Але ж бачите, що зробилося.
That's his brother's house, and his brother was alone, and they looked after him.
Okay. Can you just tell us a little bit about, was there any air raid alert or a siren that was sounded off before the blast?
Як?
Була якась сирена, коли це сталося?
Без тривоги не було нічого.
There was no alert. There was no one who went into any bunker.
Я вчора з ним говорив по телефону, він ще поздоровляв з 8 березня мою жінку. А тут рано дзвонить, каже, все, хати нема. Ми з сином приїхали, то трошки хоч що-небудь.
Він вижив?
Він просто злякався, лежить під одіялом.
Yeah, nobody entered the bunkers, and the day ago he spoke to him, and now this morning he got to know that this happened.
He was not here when they...
No.
Okay. How many households have been damaged in this area?
Скільки будинків було пошкоджено взагалі в цьому районі?
У цьому районі, ось дивіться, оце раз, два, отут 3, 4.
Там взагалі з дому не осталось. Подивіться, яка там воронка.
А там якраз снаряд упав, і там людина, там одна людина жила, і там неї шукають, ну немає, одну руку знайшли.
Like all these houses around here and on the
Ця
street.
хата, ну, якраз оцей район, де бомба впала, тут і це сталося все.
The area where bomb was dropped, like.
Okay, continue. Which was the area that you're saying? We saw the crater, right?
Yeah.
On the northern side, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've heard what the locals have to say. Now here was a gentleman whose family member who'd been living here when this area was bombed. And in some areas what is happening is that there isn't the siren that goes off. That does not warn any of them to go inside any bunker. The situation was a little different when we went to Korostan yesterday. Thankfully, when there was a siren that went off and resulting in some of those children going inside bunkers. Some of these bunkers are Soviet era bunkers, and that's the reason why they have been very well built. And lives were saved, but that's not the case here. There was no siren that was sounded off, no air raid alert that took place, and people were still living inside. And that's the reason why what you are witnessing right now is the kind of damage that has taken place. Here also, if you take a look at it, you have one house completely demolished because of the bombing that's actually taken place. I'll just try and go here and get you. Now this appears to be some sort of a kind of a underground bunker that you see here. Now these are places, these are not exactly bunkers, these are more like underground storage spaces which have now essentially been converted into more like places that one can go when there is an air raid alert that takes place. So that is also one more difficulty that a lot of people are facing, because not everywhere would you have bunkers that have been created, not everywhere would you have a facility where there would be an underground space that you can actually go into. Some households have built that and they've gone into, but when you have this kind of a powerful bomb that is basically dropped in these areas, it's very difficult to come out completely unhurt. And that's the reason why, especially in places like these are far off villages. These villages are being attacked. So it's not only urban cities or urban areas that have been attacked by the Russians, but you're also looking at some of these villages that have now come under attack. If I can go back to some of those places again, just to give you a sense, I'll ask Ravaji also to come along with me while I take you to the very place, the bombing where it took place, the crater that has been created, and look at the size of the crater. That will give you, if not a real sense, just kind of an overview of an estimate of what's the kind of bomb that must have been dropped and what could be the impact of. Some locals are here also. Just take a look at this. This is the size of the crater that has been created. What you see right now, this is the size of the crater. Now if you take a look at this area, we have seen in most of the places, be it in Overwatch, be it in Korostan, and now here in Malyn, while we have only spotted one crater here, we do not know whether, because here we were told 3 bombs, it would be expected that there would be more, but right now we've only been able to spot here. But just the sheer size of this will give you an idea of what's the bomb that was actually dropped. Roughly in almost all areas that we have gone to, the local administration that we have spoken to, they have pointed out that these are very powerful bombs that have been dropped simultaneously, not one, but simultaneously these bombs have been dropped. The first day in Zotomir where we went, there the day when the aerial bombardment actually began, Zotomir happened to be one of the first few areas that came under the aerial bombardment of the Russians. It was dropped by the fighter jets, the Sukhois that were used by the Russians, and these Sukhois actually took off from the airfields in Belarus. And now the Ukrainians have confirmed that that Belarus army is now helping the Russians, full-fledged help that has been provided to the Russians, enabling the Russians to carry out these air attacks, these aerial attacks. Because if you just look at the areas that have come under attack, these are either closer to the Russian border. So on the eastern side, you would see most of the military operations being carried out from the Russian side, from Belgorod, or for that matter, you would also find it from the Yelna base. These are bases from where the Russians are carrying out, not only once they have entered, they've carried out missile strikes, but also from the Russian side, they've been carrying out this kind of offensive. Now, up north, what you're looking at is that what helps them is, of course, the easy access that has been provided by Belarus. And if you look at the map of Ukraine, there is a larger border that has been shared between Ukraine and Belarus. A lot of places where we have been reporting from, for instance, in Rivne, for instance, in Vinnyets, these are places where we have seen a lot more attacks that have been carried out. Let me just go across to another place to just give you a view. See, take a look at this. I'll ask Rawatji to show you the smoke still billowing. Let's just move there because I want to show you that an attack that took place almost 12 hours ago, and even now the smoke is billowing out. And this was closer. There were more inflammable materials that were kept inside the house that could result in a much more longer time for the firefighters to try and douse the fire. This is going to take much more longer time. We'll have to be a little careful. I'll ask Rawatji to be a little careful because there are sharpnels all around and that could lead to some sort of an injury also. But yeah, coming back right now, what you see right here? What you see right now is that an attack that has taken place 12 hours ago, even now what you see behind me, the smoke that is still billowing out. This is the situation right now on the ground. So we've been traveling from one place to the other, and this is exactly what's the situation like in almost all areas. We're getting you live images from Malyn in northern Ukraine, where the aerial bombardment took place around 12 hours ago, leading to deaths in the area. About 5 deaths that have been reported so far. Several people have also been injured in this area. And the stench is so hard that it's difficult to perhaps report from areas which are a little closer. But we've been trying our level best to get you ground reports. I'll ask Rawatji to be a little careful because these are still very warm. It's still very hot. And of course, as you see, this is what remains of a house which was standing just about 12 hours ago, now completely charred. This is what the situation right now in Ukraine is. In fact, just for all our viewers who are tuning in right now, this is a place where a bombing has actually taken place less than 12 hours ago. A house was actually standing here. Civilians who were still staying here when the bombing took place. And that's the reason why you're looking at a civilian death. About 5 is the preliminary report that has come in. The number could very well go up because there were a lot more people who were staying. And important to point out, children were also staying in. We went into a house a short while back, and what we witnessed were elderly people who were still living there when the bombing took place. Now, these are areas where not missile strikes are taking place. These are areas where bombs are actually being dropped. In the last 24 hours, 3 crucial areas that have been covered by Republic Media Network. One was in Overwatch, the other is in Korostan, and now in Malyn. These are places in northern Ukraine, part of the very axis that has been taken by the Russian troop to basically come closer to Kiev. And so while there is a ground ground offensive which still continues, and there has been a massive pushback from the Ukrainian side. Russians have amped it up in terms of the aerial offensive. However, having said that, Ukrainians have been quite confident about being able to stop these kind of attacks. But remember, the air defense system happens to be one of the weak areas as far as Ukrainian armed forces are concerned. And that's the reason why you're looking at, with every passing day, what the Russians have been doing is they have just increased the aerial offensive. With almost in all areas that we are going to, we are now witnessing that these are not missile strikes that are actually happening, precision missile strikes, but these are more civilian areas, and in fact schools and colleges that have also been bombed by the Russians. And this is a large-scale destruction that has taken place. Not very sure if you take a look at what the Russians have been claiming, that there has been equal amount of shelling that's taken place in the Donbas region, but not very sure if there's the kind of damage that has taken place in the heartland of Ukraine, whether it is the same on the other side. But having said that, that really does not justify the kind of destruction that has been caused because of these aerial bombardments, whoever it is, be it the Russians or for that matter the Ukrainians. But at the end of the day, it's the people who are really suffering. The soldiers, on the other hand, remember, they're trying to defend their own country. You have the veterans who have now joined in. Russians have, on the other hand, they've started using the private armies. You take a look at it. The firefighters are back once again. They're still trying to douse the fire. It's been very difficult for the firefighters to douse the fire right now, because remember, what's really happening is that these are very powerful bombs that have been dropped right inside in houses where people have been staying. So not that people have been evacuated, so they would be living, there would be inflammable materials that would be inside the house, just making it even more difficult for the fire to be doused. And it's perhaps going to take far more time, because from the time that we have reached here,
Я пробачаюся, хочу здати стерею. Путін, наша армія тобі голову відкрутить вместе із своєю бандою московською. Ми тебе обіцяємо, Путін.
You've heard the kind of anger that the Ukrainians have right now against the Russian president. Especially this comes at a time when a lot more people have lost their lives, and perhaps that's the reason why with every passing day there is growing anger, especially when the evacuation has also been delayed. There are places that the humanitarian corridors have been shelled at. And let me do something. Let me also bring in my colleague Andre, who is also in this area from a different location where he's getting us those pictures, because remember, this is a larger area. So our team is trying to cover every possible area. Andre, if you can hear me, can you just take us through some of the details that you're picking up? Have you been able to speak to some more locals? What is it that they're saying? Because one local who came here was trying to speak to me. All that I could understand is that he's certainly very, very angry with the kind of aggression that has been shown by the Russians. But remember, what we are also seeing here, the anger is not really directed towards the Russians per se, as much as it is only towards the Russian president, because they believe that it's not the Russians who believe that this is just a rightful sort of a war that has been waged by the Russian president. Their anger is essentially directed only towards the Russian president. So I want to ask you, Andre, what is it that the locals are telling you? What is it that you have picked up so far?
Okay, as I've been traveling those days, some people says that is blame Putin's on this war, but the most part of the people, they tell us the all Russians wants this war, and that's they're guilty for this, for doing this, for supporting Putin's and not Putin's politics, and not for going to protest against his against what he doing right now. And just now, while I was standing here on the street, the local guy came to me and told that about the Russian pilot who drops the bombs on this, who dropped the bomb on the city, and he told that he did it not for the first time. And there is a lot of people who blame Russians. And yesterday, when we was in Overwatch, that guy who guided us told me that he doesn't have now family in Belarus and Russia because they support Putin and Lukashenko.
Well, in times of war, one would certainly expect that emotions would be running high, and a lot of people would be basically right now directing their anger at the administration, or directing their anger towards the people who have actually started this war. So it's not really unexpected, the kind of anger that we have witnessed on the ground, especially when civilians are saying that they are now being targeted, their families are being targeted, and even as they are here, what we are basically seeing is that most of these areas where people were staying, where these bombings were actually taking place. But are we really staring at some sort of an end sight? It doesn't really look like. While the talks have taken place, remember, there have been 3 rounds of negotiations that have taken place between both the sides, but there doesn't appear to be any sort of a way out. Will peace be given a chance? If you have mercenaries being brought in, foreign fighters who are being brought in, every possible method that is being employed right now to ensure that at least one side is defeated. The Ukrainians, on the one hand, they've been saying that this is they are the ones who are the victims here. It is the perpetrator happens to be Vladimir Putin, and they're willing to take on this war. Even today, you've had the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, putting out a video once again asking every person in every village to take up arms to defend their own cities. You've had a similar sort of message coming in from the defense minister. The defense minister himself, he's been on the front line. We have seen the images that he has put out, wearing a bulletproof jacket, wearing a helmet, and showing a thumbs up. A man who's been part of the negotiations with Russia. He's also made the similar sort of an appeal to almost all Ukrainians that it is time that everyone should be defending their own country, their own village. So while we here at Republic Media Network believe in traveling, believe in being on the ground and sending you ground reports so that you get an understanding of what's really happening on the ground without any spin, without even perhaps being in part of some urban center, trying to send you a synopsis of what's happening around here. We rather believe, my entire team here, we believe in going to the ground, getting you these voices, the voices that really matter.
Yes. Shravan, as you've continued that exhaustive report from Malyn bombing site, you've spoken about details that are there, and also we can see what's happening around you is a very crystal clear situation. In fact, the words speak for themselves as we're seeing Republic Media Network crew, Andre and Shravan, reporting from Malyn, and this is also the 17th city, and he's been showing us the houses that have been damaged. Thank you, Shravan. Stay safe, stay strong. We shall keep coming back to you to get a sense of the war zone. Viewers.